Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 370. We get very evil. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whelan, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I am a brand new kind of dictionary, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that one.
On this episode, we talk, I'm not even going to elaborate. On this episode, we talk about Forever Evil number 3. We talk about Phantom Stranger 13 and Pandora number 4, as we kind of enjoy talking about the horror forever. We also chat a little bit about Batman v Superman, or whatever the current going title is on that. We kind of do a little tangent on that, which is a lot of fun on this episode. And we have a voicemail from Jack, so cool episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, they're doing a 50% off all trades and hardcovers deal from DC Comics, including the newly solicited Trinity War hardcover. This collects the blockbuster event of the summer: Justice League 22 and 23, Justice League of America 6 and 7, Justice League Dark 22 and 23, Constantine 5, Trinity of Sin Pandora 1 through 3, and Trinity of Sin Phantom Stranger number 11. This is a $30 hardcover, 50% off, only $14.99 from DCBService.com. I want to remind everyone they're a digital partner of Comixology, Diamond Digital, Iverse Media, and My Digital Comics. Any of those purchases that you make, you get 5% of them towards your DCB service order. So you're building up a credit just for doing the shopping that you normally do, plus it's helping out a show sponsor. So please consider linking those accounts. Over at InStockTrades.com, they have some amazing deals on hardcovers. I'm reading and playing the Injustice game. Whether you're playing the game or not, I didn't get the game with a console. I ended up waiting till it was solicited for the PC, because that's just the way that I'm choosing to play games right now. I've been reading the comic, though, and just enjoying it as an alternative universe take on the whole Justice League. And the Volume 1 hardcovers available right now, it's 50% off, only $9.99. This is a great comic. So if you're not planning on playing the game, maybe you're not a gamer, you're just a comic fan, it's a terrific read in and of itself. For those of you that like Elseworld stories, I can't recommend enough picking it up. They also have the Batman hardcover, Volume 3 of Death of the Family, $13.74, that's 45% off, and 50% off Aquaman's Throne of Atlantis hardcover Volume 3, only $12.49. So if you're looking for any of those, just great deals always at InStockTrades.com. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping, and with the holiday season coming up, it's a great time to maybe grab some comics for friends and family and bundle that all together and get free shipping and just save more money that way. So that's InStockTrades.com. I want to thank both of those websites for continuing to support our podcast. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing in the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I have a lot of enjoyity after hearing that. Let's talk comics.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Jim, for our first chat this episode, we're going to talk about Forever Evil number 3, Prisoners. Jeff Johns is the writer, David Finch on pencils, Richard Friend is the inker, Sonia Oback on colors, Rob Lay letterer, David Finch, Richard Friend, and Sonia Oback on cover, Ethan Van Sciver and Hi-Fi on the variant covers. Kate Stewart is the assistant editor, and Brian Cunningham is the senior editor. Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. The third issue, it's a 7-issue series, and I don't know why. I guess I haven't been paying attention to how many issues this was going to be. I don't know why I was thinking this was like a 5 or 6 issue event. I'm actually glad that it's 7 issues, because at the pace they're moving at, I think they're delving a lot into the villains world, but now we're starting to get bits and pieces of what's going on with our favorite heroes.
Yeah.
And I really like this delivery method because it feels more real-time You know, like, things are moving at, I think, at a really nice pace, because I like the mystery. Like, you know, we get a lot in this issue as far as what's really going on here.
Yeah, we finally get to see the prison that they're in, and just it's the piecing of everything coming together. And again, I love seeing the different villains, siding up who's going, and it makes sense how we're getting this played out. We're seeing villains aren't just villains in this. Some of them are like, yeah, I'm a bad guy, but you know what? This is still my Earth. You're not going to take it from me. So I'm really digging how everything's laying out right now.
Well, let's just go ahead to what the prison is. It's Firestorm.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that coming. I don't know why I should have, because when you look back at it now, who was the main guide that was going along with Martian Manhunter but Jason Rush? Which leads us to the question, where is Ronnie Raymond, or what is Ronnie Raymond's role? Are they trapped inside Ronnie's head? How is it, or how is this working? Because Ronnie is like Ronnie's body is like the Matrix of Firestorm. Do we know anything about Ronnie?
No, we haven't seen him. Now, was it the evil Firestorm they're trapped in, or the good Firestorm?
The good Firestorm. The evil Firestorm had something to do with it.
Okay, so the evil one pulled them into the good Firestorm.
Right.
Okay.
Because their Firestorm analog opened up our Firestorm, exposing the matrix that binds the two men who form him. It was like staring into the sun. So that, like, it seemed to be like that was... And because Batman and Catwoman were outside that dealing with Cyborg, that's the reason why the three of them were not pulled in. They happened to be far enough away that they weren't pulled into that, whatever whirlwind that yanked everybody else away. So that explains the separation.
Yeah, see, I just took it that Batman is that cool that he's able to fight it.
Yeah, but how does that explain? How does that explain Cat? Well, see, and I agree with you. I'm not going to argue with that point. But how does that explain Catwoman and Cyborg? Is it just because they were with Batman and his coolness oozed off onto them?
His coolness repelled it.
See, I actually like that.
Catwoman's his woman, so he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to protect my babe," and he had placed Cyborg under his protection, so.
Now, if they use that in the issue as the real reason, would you care? Because, I got to be honest with you, I kind of would accept that answer. Why? Because he's Batman. I like sometimes when they do that. Not in this type of scenario, but, every so often, somebody will go, well, why did this work this way for Batman? Because he's Batman. Yeah. I think that just kind of works sometimes.
That answer does work for him, and I would actually probably laugh my head off if that was ever became the actual explanation for something like this.
See, I think to me, to go to a Marvel analog for him, I think Wolverine is kind of one that can get away with kind of that stuff too. I don't know what it is. There's something about the coolness factor of both of those characters. Because I've always looked at Wolverine. I know that why does Wolverine wind up in 700 series like Batman does? Because he's a cool character. As much as you make fun of the fact that the guy appears all over the place, you get the right writers on a Wolverine book, it becomes one of your favorite books. Or if Wolverine gets put on a really cool team book, he becomes one of your favorite characters in there because you want to see how the other characters are going to react to Wolverine. Batman has the same quality about him. And it's something about those two characters that you just kind of get away with those things. When they're handled right, there's something that is just incredibly cool about both of them. Did you see the Wolverine? Speaking of that? I know this is kind of a weird tangent just because we're talking about it. Did you ever see it? Because we never discussed it.
No, actually, I never did get to see the movie.
They're releasing that, I think, on the 19th. I get a lot of my movies now on iTunes.
Yeah.
And I saw on there they've got this extended cut of the Wolverine, which I liked the Wolverine a lot, so I'm really anxious for that. And I ended up grabbing this week the Man of Steel, I should say, that came out.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I'm really curious to watch some of the extra features because I just think it was a really, really good movie. And it's weird, sometimes I'll hear there's some controversy or some people didn't like it or some people didn't think, I don't know, for me, I was mesmerized. So I'm really excited to own it and be able to watch it whenever I want now. It's in that category. It fits in there to me with the Donner films. I really enjoyed it that much. I'm really anxious to rewatch that film again.
Oh, definite. And I'm looking forward to the next movie and just seeing where they go with this. And I chuckle every time, I'll see something online where people are arguing about this and that, and this is going to be terrible. You haven't even, the movie isn't even filmed yet. You can't call it bad yet. At least wait until the movie is released and you watch it before you say it's bad.
Did you see that Batman's costume with Kevin Smith saw it? I don't know how much it's based on this, but the rumor was that it was going to be based on the Batman Noel, I think, costume. You know, that hardcover, that Christmas hardcover, which I thought was a really good-looking costume. You know, I think that would be a really interesting look for him. But I guess Kevin Smith saw a photo or a picture of Ben Affleck in the costume that Zack Snyder had showed him, and he just, was jumping for joy and said it was really great. And he's a huge Batman fan, so I actually kind of take that for him to be in like the fan geek out category when it comes to that kind of thing. So him excited about the costume for some reason just makes me more excited. It's funny how like we don't know a lot, but I like am into every little tiny piece of news. They had a Man of Steel fan event this past week. And I want to thank, actually, somebody in our Facebook group, and I apologize for not knowing the name off the top of my head, posted that, this fan event, what do you think about news coming out of it? And they streamed it on Yahoo Movies. And there was a nice little thread going on in the Facebook group about it. And all that they revealed at the end about Man of Steel, it was a cool event because it was Zack Snyder and Amy Adams with Kevin Smith moderating. Because, it was kind of like a promo for the DVD coming out, or Blu-ray and DVD coming out. And then they had Henry Cavill, like, via satellite, talking to them as well. So it was just kind of like this neat event, just talking about the film and all that kind of stuff, which was cool in and of itself. But at the end, they had, like, a little teaser. What it was, like, concept art, so to speak, of, like, Batman and Superman. Like, but it wasn't, like, necessarily film art. It was kind of, like, just, like, thought process stuff. Like, it was a picture of Batman facing Superman, and, like, with the concept, the two of them were going to go at it. It wasn't like one, how you see storyboards for a movie? It wasn't that. It was just if somebody, like, painted them and said, hey, this is kind of the introductory idea of what we're probably going to do for this film, which tells you nothing, right? I was so geeked out by this. Don't, please, if you're taking this like I'm mocking the whole thing, it's just the opposite. What I'm trying to paint a picture of is how little information came out of this, but I was like drooling watching this because they're going to put the pictures up as part of a charity auction. And I thought, with that whole DC thing that's going on right now, that whole charity auction they got going on, they've been doing on like Kickstarter, and then they're doing stuff on eBay. I think it's really cool. We can be heroes.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a part of that. And I don't know, I was like geeking out, like, wow, that's awesome. I think there's just because the artwork is associated with the fact that we're finally going to get a movie with these two in it together, live action, that's cool. I'm very into it. Like, they can show me anything.
Well, we got the one female actress who's in Thor that knows an awful lot about the movie. Of course, that run the rampant, the rumors of Wonder Woman, because she would actually work wonderfully as Wonder Woman. She's got the good look for it. She's got a physical presence, but she's also very attractive. So that's another thing that when I started seeing that and all the rumors flying around, I'm like, ooh, that'd be nice to have all three and just have her be a surprise.
See, I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love that. Like, there's stuff to get excited about leading up to the movie. This is what a build should be, and I don't care, like, I don't know very much right now. I actually quite like that, just give me little teases here and there, just to get me talking about it and thinking about it, and, just enough that my mind's gonna wander, but, like, don't give me too much that I'm spoiled beyond belief, because I just really want to go in and enjoy, because I thought Man of Steel, I walked in, even though I knew certain things, I felt like the movie went into a whole direction that I didn't expect, did a whole bunch of things that I didn't really see coming. I liked that. And I hope this film has that same quality about it. I think the Batman movies that Nolan released had that same characteristic as well. Even though you knew the villains and had an idea of what story they were probably going to go with, there was still a lot that surprised me in how they handled it. And I think that's great, in a film where you can tread enough on the classic that as a fan I'm geeking out because, oh my God, they just did that on the screen. But there's also enough fresh and new in there that you feel like you're getting a new take and a new experience with it. That's neat. I'm into that. So that's what I'm hoping this is going to build up to. Something that has enough that makes me feel like the classic, but fresh as well. So I'm just super excited. I think this is great. And we've got an event going on right now that I'm super excited about. I like seeing this take on the crime syndicate. I'm glad it's a 7-issue series. I was pleasantly surprised by that. I don't know why it took me 3 issues to realize that's what we're dealing with. And I know I've read the solicits where it said that. But, I guess I didn't really care. I wasn't spending a whole lot of time worrying about the issue number. I've just been enjoying the ride. I guess I was pleasantly surprised because I felt like it should be getting closer to the close. And when I'm realizing we're not even halfway through yet, I was happy because I liked the pace so much. I didn't want anything to be sped up or crammed together. Because I loved what was going on. We see Professor Ivo and we see his dad kind of getting together and trying to come up. I'm sorry, not Ivo. I'm thinking of Ivo from something else. Dr. Thomas Morrow, basically helping out the dad and trying to figure out a way to get Cyborg to live in the midst of all the nonsense that's going on around him. And this is Bruce's first time realizing what happened to Dick Grayson, Nightwing. That's a huge event because for him, the question now is, because Dick Grayson's name's out there, how much is known about him? What are people assuming? And on top of that, how is he going to rescue Dick Grayson considering the current scenario? I love that. This is where finally something that was really thrown into the first issue of all this with Dick Grayson's reveal of being, publicly, of being Nightwing. Now it puts Bruce in this real interesting situation. And I love how him and Catwoman are interacting throughout all this. Like, if there's somebody I want to see him eventually wind up with, it's Catwoman. And I know that there's this edict, well, the characters can't get married, or they can't do this, or they can't do that. I don't know. To me, that's why you reboot characters, or you have divorce, or do all that kind of, take them through real world scenarios. I don't care. Have them get married for a couple of years and something goes horribly wrong and they're not. I would love to see them explore it in the comic. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, this, it's the human interaction, these emotional moments that amplify and, really just kick it up a notch when we start getting the cool action scenes. I love seeing Victor and his dad. And he, because you think about just the moments before this, they had a very, very difficult relationship because everything that happened to him, everything that happened to Cyborg, he blamed on his dad. He's not one of those happy heroes, hey, I'm glad my whole body's been fried away and I'm now more machine than man. This is wonderful. No, he's not too pleased with that, and it makes sense. I wouldn't want that to happen to me either. So he and his dad had this relationship, had this very strained, non-emotional relationship. And even before this accident happened, he and his dad never were, touchy-feely, lovey-dovey friendly towards each other. So you love seeing just how his body's completely ravaged. He's hanging by a thread. The dad is just like, he's got that moments, and you can just tell in his mind, he's thinking of all the things he never said to his son, all the bad, stuff that happened between them. And, he's lying right there, an inch away from death, and he's got to step up and he's got to save him. I love just those human emotional moments. And even Bruce, him kind of, he's still Batman, but he is kind of lets the guard down a little bit when it's those moments of seeing Dick up on the screen and Catwoman's like, who is he? I
loved the art choice there. With the We Don't Know That scene, I liked that we got to see the Bruce Wayne eye there, but I loved the art choice of when he said he's a friend, you don't see that. The panels covering over that, you just see the Batman eye. Yeah. If that makes sense. I don't know. There was something about the visual choices in that I thought were just really clever, because it was kind of, I don't know if that was done consciously or on purpose, but for me it worked if it was. If not, I really liked it. It had a different layer to it that maybe I'm just reading into, but who cares? It was great. I really loved the visual of that whole sequence.
Well, even some of the moments beforehand, where there's still a shadow kind of covering over the human side. You still can see the eyeball, and you can still see the detail, and you can see the ragged, so it's shredded. But because of the way the shadows are, it's still covering up, so you still have a kind of full Batman mask. But when we get to the moments where it's been found out, when he finds out, and we need to find Nightwing, that's when we first start seeing just half the mask is gone. We really start seeing the amount of damage Bruce took to get there. It was just a really cool. Again, he doesn't lose anything of Batman. He's not, you don't look at him and think, oh, he's all emotional. No, he's still very much in check. He's still very much Batman, but you do see that human side of him.
I love the whole Lex Luthor debate with himself about, kind of debate with the world about Superman and the over-reliance of him. Because sometimes it's, just because he's an alien. This whole sequence about cautioning Congress about the over-reliance of Superman because we become stagnant and vulnerable, I think it's kind of like playing off of the whole argument that people have a lot of times with technology. And I'm a tech junkie. I love technology. But I do believe there's a point to you need to be rounded off. I also would argue that people on the other side that are like, no technology for me, I think you're kind of being stagnant because you're kind of not rounding yourself off and embracing part of that. I think in life you need balance. And I think Luthor's point there, we talk about sometimes how you can hear things from Lex Luthor and you go, he's right. Like in this scenario, what he's presenting there, I'm like, it's hard to argue with that because, first of all, that's not, to me, if I'm a Superman fan and he said that to me, I'd say, well, dude, you gotta be right. You gotta be right on that one. Even though Superman's here doesn't mean we should just like immediately dump everything on Superman and not learn to stand on our own 2 feet as well. So I think there's something interesting about that point, and it was very well made, and it was a very deep sequence for me. I don't know. I really dug it because it felt real. Like, this is what somebody would say in this world who is in opposition to the idea of, kind of handing the keys to Superman and walking away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, just that analogy you had with technology is absolutely just spot on. And again, it's something that I like about a well-written comic, that we have this supernatural, we have this, completely unbelievable parameters going on, but it still has that ring of real-ability. It's, it still seems like it's actually is something that, is connected with what we're dealing with. And it's kind of funny when I'll sit back and, I work with a lot of retired, cops, some retired feds, and just, you sit back and you look at people's different investigation styles. And you got the, my side that has, a more heavier reliance on what we can find out online, what different stuff we can see, and just the technology base. But then there's a lot of those guys who sit there and they're like, no, it's not about, looking up stuff and looking up the information. You got to know what's going on. It's about the heart of the investigation, the heart of that investigator who knows what to look for, who knows the questions to ask when he's interviewing somebody. It's, it's that old school versus new school. And, it's kind of neat seeing just it kind of play out here just in Luthor's inner dialogue. Because he's, I've always said I love Luthor as a villain because there are points of that he says are real and are true. And this is one of those moments where he's like, see, I'm right. I'm always right. Just proved it right here. You can't put all your faith in the alien. You got to put your faith in humanity. So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
I like that he didn't call him the alien there, though.
Right.
For some reason, there would have been a difference if he called him the alien and he was having that discussion with me, because I would have been sitting there saying, well, he really just dislikes him because of the fact that he's an alien. You get into a whole racist thing.
Right.
And those type of arguments for me lose steam quickly, because you're sitting there like, okay, you've got to throw out the slur. So, that you're coming at a point of ignorance, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, definitely.
But for me, when the way that he presented this was not from that. Like, it really was just straight facts. And that has more power for me, where I can sit there and kind of look at it and say, okay, his point's well made. Because even if I'm, really, the biggest Superman fan on the planet, I can't argue with what he's saying. And that's the part that's cool, because it's not a slam on Superman. It's more of a caution to us as a people on what we should do to kind of better ourselves and keep ourselves in line. So you can't argue with that, the way that it's presented. I liked it that way. It was just something interesting about it. Sometimes when you present Luthor's argument, I've found where it's a blatant slam on Superman, that's when I'm completely turned off by Luthor. He's, just hates Superman because of where Superman comes from and his powers and all that kind of stuff. This didn't get presented that way. I like when you show him I like both lights, because I do think you need to place that side of Luthor in the comic as well, because he has that. But I could see myself very much defending his argument here, and I think that's cool.
Oh God, yeah, and I'm loving Bizarro in this.
Does he have real ability?
Well, you know what? There's a definite impressosity with the way they're handling Bizarro here. Thank you, Freddie.
What is real ability?
Well, it's another word I just made up that's going to probably make more appearances.
Very good. Pretty soon you're going to be able to make whole sentences of nonsense.
Well, I can probably do that right now. Heck, most people will say anything I say is nonsense, so I'm already doing it.
No. It was like I wanted to call you on it like right away, and I'm like I couldn't because you went off this terrific rant, and I'm like sitting here. I'm not going to like derail this because it's what he's saying is really good, but I had to throw that in there because I'm like, what is he talking about? Real ability? Where did that even come from? I agree with you on Bizarro. I mean, what a great because the one thing I like about this is he feels very much to what at the core Bizarro should be. And I liked Lex Luthor's idea, you know, he's the most undercooked mind and that type of thing. I hope at some point we get Bizarro World, even if this Bizarro creates it on some level. Because I don't know if maybe you don't like that concept as much as I do. I like that concept of Bizarro World. And, I think there's ways to have this Bizarro create something like that or be a part of making something like that. But for right now, I really love the relationship between these two. I like that his costume's like a patchwork quilt. That was really, it's not his Superman's super suit, which I've grown to really like the story behind Superman's suit. And if you gave Bizarro something that looked just like that, I'd have an issue with it because where would he get a hold of that?
Right.
So this all works for me that it mimics Superman's costume, but it's clearly not. And that's cool as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I do like Bizarro World, but I gotta say this type of Bizarro I think I like more because with the Bizarro World it always I'd read the stories and I would chuckle and I would enjoy them, but it's not a long-term character for me. It's the introduce here, introduce there, whereas the kind of quasi Frankenstein type clone that's not completely fully cooked. In my head, I see more possibilities of this Bizarro developing, just much like how Frankenstein in his story actually developed and became more intelligent and started actually being more humanistic. So I could see Bizarro maybe growing and evolving and actually kicking it up a notch, and maybe him kicking it up a notch will give us that other Bizarro who talks, who says things backwards, who does some of the funnier stuff, who has a Bizarro planet.
Or arguably, maybe not that, and maybe somebody who's more dangerous in how he develops. Because kind of agreeing with what you say, I guess I wouldn't mind if I am kind of going to agree with you to a certain extent. I would like to see him become more of a threat, because there's sometimes where Bizarro's painted as a little too cartoony, and I like the idea of him being dangerous on some level, like he could evolve and continue to adapt. I wouldn't mind seeing a Bizarro world where maybe the concept of Bizarro world is a little bit more deadly, because, if there is more of them, or if he starts to find ways to create more of them, because he becomes more intelligent along the way, that he starts recreating Super Luthor's experiment, but wrong. Kind of the way that things have happened. That, I don't know, we might get something, if there is a Bizarro world, that we get something more deadly. I don't know that I have a preference. I like the concept quite a bit.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, should be relegated to the Adventures of Superman book that's out than this. I don't know. I'm curious to see how the characters develop.
Yeah. Definitely, I wouldn't develop him beyond, this in the Forever Evil storyline. This is something I'm talking to development. I'd say, inside, the Superman titles. That's when I'd start giving him his own version of strategery. Just let him slowly grow throughout the various Superman titles.
This is I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think we should give Bizarro strategery. Real ability There's a lot of words that I agree with you. As he evolves, he might hit a point where he has real ability and strategery.
And impressosity.
Yes, I think he'll have all of those things. Yeah, for once, that seems to make sense to me.
All right.
I like that the Luthor, though, realizing that having like a drone with the powers of Superman is giving him the opportunity to do some things that maybe wouldn't be expected by Ultraman and his crew. And this is where the intelligence and guidance of Lex Luthor, being able to use soldiers to kind of do some of the work for him, really works. His strategic mind comes into play, and I really like how that's playing out. I'm really enjoying his role in this whole story.
Well, the fact that he had hidden satellites and just everything he's going through, why he's able to access the tech. He's using his armor to power the big dish, but he's got these satellites that are hidden out there, which is why Syndicate never found them. Even Cyborg didn't even know about these things, and Cyborg's connected to everything. Now, Luthor is able to keep it off track, keep it off grid, so he couldn't get to it. He doesn't know it. The society doesn't know it. I love these are cool Lex Luthor moments. We talk about the coolness of Batman, how he prepares for everything. Well, Luthor also has that same type of coolness where he also is thinking of this. He's thinking it's the classic chess analogies where you got to be 5 moves ahead of your enemy. Well, Luthor's 10 moves ahead because he's Lex Luthor.
I like the whole bit with Ultraman and Black Adam. I got to say, the person who really, to me, nails how to write Black Adam is Jeff Johns. And this is a sequence where, the Black Adam is... We've seen him in the backups of JLA, kind of introducing him as, this foil to the new version of Shazam. But seeing him here he's hearkening back to the Black Adam that we fell in love with in 52. I really like the fact that he is that guy that, yes, you can see why he'd be a bad guy and why there would be times where you'd question him. But when you see this part and you almost see him as a defender of this concept that he's got of people trying to enslave Earth, going back to his history, there's a part of that where you're like, wow, I like him too in this. I think the handling of both Luthor and Black Adam and setting them up to be normally people that you'd want to see defeated, but in this story you want to see them victorious, is being handled extremely well. It's unusual to see them as our heroes in the story. I really like how they're doing that. And I think the same thing can be applied to Captain Cold.
Oh, God, yeah. And I was glad we see that magic does affect Ultraman, because when Black Adam calls down the lightning, Ultraman's like, not thinking anything. And then all of a sudden, hey, wait, I'm bleeding. What's going on here? So it's nice to see that, Ultraman still has, some of the same weaknesses. And, he's not completely, indestructible. He can be taken. And having someone like Luthor and Black Adam teaming up will be a definite danger to him.
He doesn't have the advantage that Superman does. Superman, if this type of thing happens to him, you charge up from the sun and it helps to heal him, make him stronger. He needs kryptonite to do that, which makes it a much more dangerous situation. My question would be, what happens to this guy when kryptonite runs out? Because that's not limitless.
No, because it is, I think because his powers directly come from kryptonite. So he needs to have it there.
Ingesting it.
Yeah, but I also thought just being in its presence would charge him up, but, the ingesting of it, gives him the supercharge.
Mm-hmm.
So if, he's down to the last bits of kryptonite, he's just got to be smart and not ingest it. He's got to keep it secured and, keep it somewhere. Because I'm assuming on his Earth, he had, stockpiles of kryptonite, so he wouldn't just burn through all of it. He would actually be able to just slowly absorb the radiation.
But I think part of it is, though, he ingests it because it's almost like an addiction. He likes the extra power charge.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting quality about him with that. At least I got that impression with the way he's being handled in this, that there is that part of him that needs that, not even just as an addiction, as far as just this sense of like he becomes more of a leader. He becomes more of a threat when he does that. I don't know. It's a very interesting exploration. That's one of the things that I'm loving about the pacing. I feel we're getting to know the people from our Earth that are slowly coming together to form some form of resistance, and also to know like the new rulers or new current rulers of Earth in a way that I think is very satisfying. It's a very well done story.
Oh God, yeah. And again, just Lex always notices stuff. He's always got his eyes open. He sees that Ultraman's flying to avoid the path of the sun. Mm-hmm. So he's going to put two and two together very quickly, and knowing how our Superman's charged by the sun, this guy is hurt by the sun. So Luthor's one of his first plans, when he's fighting, he's going to pull in solar energy. Instead of using a kryptonite laser, he's going to use a solar laser. And we're going to see Luthor, tweaking and shifting and bobbing and weaving. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing, the fight between Luthor and Ultraman. Because Ultraman, maybe he defeated their version of Luthor, but he's up against this version of Luthor. Maybe that version of Luthor was a kinder, gentler Luthor. He's up against the hardcore killing machine that we know Lex Luthor can be. So this is going to be another interesting fight when a villain is facing off with another villain. They're facing off with people who will kill you. It's not about the heroes who want to stop you. No, these are villains. They're going to kill you. So there's going to be a whole nother level to the fight that's going to play out. And that's another thing I'm very excited to see.
I love that Power Ring was so thrown off by Trickster just having an itch. Like he was just squinting or, probably jiggling his mask with, the way you will with your face, where you're not putting your hands up because he was told not to put his hands up. And I love how, don't look at me that way. Well, you told him to not do that, to not itch, because he didn't itch yet, so it was like, you told him not to do this, but yet you kind of want him to avoid it. I just thought it was great. I thought it was showing his paranoia. I really loved how that played out.
It's the cowardness of Power Ring. And I think that's one of the more interesting things that as this is playing out and we're seeing more and dealing with more. Our Hal Jordan is this man, who can overcome great fear. Mm-hmm. Well, this version, not only can he not overcome great fear, he's a coward. He's flat out afraid of everything. He's afraid of his own shadow. So I love just that kind of contrast and that kind of distance. You give a coward, you give someone like this massive amounts of power, he's going to do stupid stuff like this. And in battle, that's something that's going to play against him, and that's something they're going to be able to use against him. They'll be able to use his own fears. And whether it's Trickster doing little stuff, whether it's the heroes coming back, heck, Batman could probably take this guy without batting an eye, just because Batman is one of those masters of fear. So that's going to be kind of an interesting battle.
Would the ring feed off of that? Because the ring's is a parasite on him. To me, I've always wanted a Green Lantern ring. I mean, you look at that and you say to yourself, "Wow, if I have the willpower to do that, you can really make anything." I mean, that's a very cool item to have. And I think there's something in the lore that in recent years has become much more impressive when you get to see, the issue I always refer back to is when Green Arrow put on the ring and how much it took him to make an arrow with it. I thought that handling of it were showing us just, what it means to be chosen and why you're chosen and really the kind of skill set and intrinsic thing you've got to have a part of you to be able to actually create constructs using that ring. I think that's cool. So you put it on a contrast, and this thing's a parasite leeching off of this guy. The way that you can actually see the tendrils into his hand and forearm. Yeah. I mean, there is a creep like this you don't want in a million years. It reminds me of the face huggers from Aliens. That's always been to me one of the creepier things. This thing latches onto you and it just it becomes a part of your body. Anything that is inside you or invading you, to me, is some of the creepiest things in the world. And this really works on that level. If you've already got fear, this is only going to add to it and feed off of it. And look at the blast that's unleashed, the more creeped out he gets.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And this is, and even it was kind of that neat point where Cold blasts the hand and kind of blocks off the parasitical connection. And those moments, he's like, the cold, it quieted the ring. It doesn't hurt so bad anyway. And then boom, but the ring's got to free itself. It does have its own entity. It does have its own intelligence. So it's, this is, some neat stuff that they're exploring. I wish, I'm hoping we can get more out of these guys, more stories down the line, or just more of an explanation on who they are, where it's coming out. We got 7 issues here, but I'm thinking we're not going to get much more into their backstory.
Now, what's interesting is he separated Cold from the Cold Gun.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Just showing like what Deathstorm can do. And how is that going to play out with the other rogues? I loved how they got away.
Well, but they're weakened.
Right.
Their powers are also on the fritz. So I'm wondering if they're kind of separated from their powers, and if they're going to, because I liked the fact that the rogues were internalized and they had the powers and they became metas, but part of me did like the fact that the rogues were regular people who had these devices. It added to, again, who they were and why they're about the score, why they're not the big bad, going to conquer the world type villains. They're thieves. They're about the score. They're about the job. They're about that, and it's that code of the rogues, because they were just people who had these devices. But not only people with the devices, people who knew how to use these things to their utmost potential and fullest. Because you think about the time Captain Cold went up against, I can't think of the name of the other guy who had one of his ice guns, and he just completely just toasted, froze up that guy, and just without batting an eye, took him without breaking stride, because Captain Cold is just so much better with his weaponry than that other guy was. And so going back to the fact that they're pulling the powers out of him, he's going to have to go back to the guns. He's going to have to go back to, maybe, the way he was, but he's still Captain Cold. He's still dangerous.
Black Manta coming out of the water. I gotta tell you, it's one of the things I've really loved about the Aquaman series has been the way that it's developed, characters like Black Manta and kind of, updated him for a new generation. This whole thing where he took away the one thing that meant the most to me. I wanted this. I wanted to be able to take down Aquaman. I wanted it to be me. He took this away from me. So I'm going to take everything from them. This was his chance to get his revenge, to kind of have his validation, whatever. And that was taken from him. I love that. I mean, that's just such a great way to handle that.
Oh, heck yeah. And it's, again, another, villain that their motivation, why they're not with the society, makes sense. We saw that in the last issue where his father's grave got desecrated, and he was like, oh, it's on now. We're taking these guys down. And you see this crew coming together, which it kind of chuckles that last page. You got Black Man, you got Black Adam completely out cold and looking really bad. You got Captain Cold with who's pretty much unarmed. But still, this team is like, okay, this team, even, with right now the weaknesses they got going, they're still going to be a formidable fighting force. They're going to still gather, they're going to, build, and this is going to be something kind of neat. And again, I'm getting excited to root for the villains.
I am too. I think that's something that's really interesting about this. I am interested in rooting for the villains. And I think that's great character development, where you hate so much the crime syndicate that you want to see them defeated by our villains from this world. It's neat. It's a really great story. The development, like I said, the pacing, I think, is just great. This definitely needed to be a 7. And you know what? If they announce tomorrow, Jeff Johns has been working on the scripts, and really has felt like extra material needs to be put in place to give this an 8th issue, I would be thrilled with that. Because I just love the pacing. I just think it's a great, longer form story that takes advantage of the fact that it's going to be at least 7 issues. I think, I guess I've gotten so used to everything is either like done in 1, 3 issues to 6 issues. Because, it's kind of like made for the trade kind of thing. It's nice to see creators experimenting, and I hope this becomes a rule of thumb. I love trades. I love the concept of trades. But I don't think trades as a concept need to be limited to 6 issues. So I think it's great to see the story driving the length instead of how it's going to be collected driving the length, if that makes sense. You should always put the good story first, and that's where I think this pacing's working. And I just think that's really cool. And I don't think you should also drive a story longer than it needs to. You know, it really should be the first order of business is going to be making a great story and then just collecting it in a way that makes sense to the story that's been delivered. Can we talk a little bit about the Phantom Stranger issue?
Yeah.
Number 13?
Yeah. Next issue will be Phantom Stranger number 13. The writer is J.M. DeMatteis, artist Fernando Blanco, with colorist Brad Anderson, letterer Travis Lanham, cover artist Guillaume Marchit, and associate editor Harvey Richards. Will Moss is editor, and Brian Cunningham is senior editor.
Just apologize for Gilliam.
Oh, yes.
Because
I never know with I'm assuming, Guillaume Marsh, not Gilliam, because I'm assuming, because it wouldn't be as a hard G sound.
Do you think it's an SH, not March?
I think it's a Marsh, not March, because I think March would be more like an American pronunciation. I always assume that it would have more of a a foreign European pronunciation.
I would love for there to be somewhere online that just has pronunciations of the names of comic creators, just because we've got the internet now. There probably is too. There's probably somewhere just creator names for dummies.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that in reference to you. I mean in reference to me.
Oh, no. Yeah, I hear you. I agree.
I've got to tell you, I've really loved this book since it started. And J.M. DeMatteis taking over the book has been welcome. And that's no insult to anything that's come before, because I've just really enjoyed this book from the beginning. This is a story where getting to really delve into this guy and what it's like to have a life back, to be kind of, we've lived so long, paid so much for our sins. You have a chance to have a family and maybe to have a second chance to maybe start to get it right. And for all the right reasons, like his reasons for kind of taking the things away from Philip Stark were genuine, legit. The guy was messed up. And I really liked how that whole story played out. I was rooting for him to keep the family. I really was. And I wanted to see where that went, because I like that kind of thing. And I give them full credit for what they did, because to me, it's that much more of an interesting story. To see him in this Forever Evil tie-in, though, and to kind of get a look at what's going on with him and the Question. Why there is this animosity that's going on between them. Really getting to the core of it in this issue, I thought was really brilliant.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And this is one of those titles that I am actually very grateful to the podcast for. Mm-hmm. Because if we weren't doing this podcast, I don't think I probably would have given this title a shot. Just because, it never really fell in, the pre-podcast Jim. It wouldn't have fallen in his radar. It wouldn't have fallen in my scope, and I wouldn't have said, "Oh, yeah, let me give this a try." But because of the show, I'm giving, my horizons have been expanded on the different parts of the universe. But also, I picked up, said, "Okay, well, I, pick it up for the show, read it, see what happens." And as the title goes on, I'm just like, this character is really cool and really groovy. And then you start seeing just his interactions when they brought in the full trinity of, with the three of them kind of interacting and where they come from and what's going on with them. I'm like, oh man, this is okay. Yeah, he's a neat character that, I didn't know what they could do with him, where they could take him, because he was always the mysterious Phantom Stranger. He pops in and pops out.
Can you do that again?
The mysterious Phantom Stranger. And by the way, when I am reading his voice, when I am reading him and he's speaking, this is the voice I hear for the Phantom Stranger. I hear that in my head as every time I read his lines.
So you're sitting here, because of you, Sin Eater, I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Pretty much, yeah.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah. He's got to have a little bit, that Phantom Stranger sound to it.
Does it take you 2 hours to read the book? I hold my family in my heart. Nothing will ever erase their memory.
I'm not saying it out loud. I'm reading
no, but
it
I'm saying, but
even this is the voice I hear inside my head.
But to hear that voice, you would have to be reading at a pace that would match that. I'm not saying you were. I don't think you're at home doing that Although secretly at times I think you do. But
You know, I'd be lying if I said I've never done it, okay? I'm not saying all the time, but there has been a couple times with some of the lines and some of the interactions I have said it out loud, and there's a couple comics that maybe I've reenacted as I was reading it, and I've gotten animated while I'm reading it and stuff like that. Not all the time, but I'd be lying if I said I've never done that. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
I can see your neighbors now going, that Segulin guy's kids were tortured and murdered. And he's very bitter about it. Rightfully so, but I mean, jeez.
I don't think my neighbors even know my last name. They just know me probably as the weird guy who killed his lawn.
I'm just looking at the lines in this one. Yeah. Yes, and this house reeks of your evil. You kidnapped innocents, tortured them, murdered them, and you would have done the same to Elena and the children if I hadn't. I would love to be over at your house when you're doing a read aloud of this. Wow.
Now, with the introduction of the big old bulldog.
Yeah, did you like that?
Hellhound. What?
I like the use of animals in this.
Yes. Oh, because you get the voice and the entity that's that's God, but they're not saying it's God, is the little small Scottish Terrier, and then of course you have the evil form, the evil demon, devil, Lucifer, whatever, is the big massive nasty dog. So it's again, I like how the contrast and what they're doing with it.
He's Darth Vader or the Emperor to Yoda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it fits and it works. And when we first saw the one little the Scottish Terrier, I'm like, really? Okay, but it comes. I get it now. It makes sense, and it's a neat concept. It's a neat story mode, and it's a neat way to tell the tale. And this again was a really cool notion that this Sin Eater, who was this nasty person who killed and tortured innocent people, who was going to do that to his family, but in his sick head, in his twisted nature, he was justifying it. He was saving them from this horrific world. He was saving them from all that is going on, all this nastiness. So to him, it was an act of love. And in the real world, when we get these crazies who do this type of sick stuff, and I sit there and I don't sit there and like, oh, I understand that poor fella. I never say that. I say rotten heck. I'm like, rotten hell, you son of a bitch. But with this book, I was like, okay, I understood where it was going from. I didn't feel bad for him, but I understood his mindset. I understood where he was going with it. And I loved just seeing how that played out. And I was like, this is cool.
I like seeing the question brought back into this.
Yeah.
Especially right after that. Watching from the background. But the Phantom Stranger probably is sort of aware of it. But the Zoriel distraction kind of, maybe dismisses it or whatever. I don't know. It was kind of cool the way that all played out, that he was watching him from a distance.
Yeah.
I like the way the artwork played out there.
Well, I didn't notice him at first, because you get that great scene when he's just sitting there telling the people, oh, yeah, they moved. Oh, yeah, and he's just planting the suggestion in their head. And then Zoriel shows up, and it wasn't until my second read-through with the artwork that I actually saw the question standing in the background there. I actually saw him standing there. I'm like, oh, cool. I missed that before. Again, just further reasons why I always like to do the double, triple read-throughs and have the one where I just focus on the artwork. I don't focus on any words. I just look at the pictures, take your time going through the different panels, and just follow the storyline, in visual mode. And it's really helped me enjoy books like this as well as any other book in the universe.
I'm glad the character was reimagined because he was a big part of JLA when Morrison was writing it, and it was character created specifically for that. And I love that the character has seen new light in this fashion. It makes sense that he would be a part of this book and what's going on there. I like that he's saying, you got to understand, dude, the presence, it's my boss. And I might not have wanted to do it, but I got to do it. Otherwise I'm going to be where you are. You don't understand how this works. It's not. I'm glad that the mind was changed so we can be having this little chit chat. It's interesting how that I like that uncomfortable nature of the supernatural world. Where you just don't know what to believe, what to trust. And there's something to that I just think works on a really deep level. And this book embraces it. And I just think that's really interesting. I think it's a good book that way. Because you should wonder who's friends and who's not. Allies and allegiances can change on a dime. A lot of times from an explanation or a common enemy.
Yeah.
And I like that about this world. It's a world that John Constantine dances in all the time. It's funny how this book in many ways justifies the way that John Constantine behaves and why he survives. Yeah. Because you almost have to be a John Constantine to survive in this world. I like that. There's something to be said for the way that the supernatural world operates. I think it works in Swamp Thing. You see that with what goes on with the rot in that world. You see what happens in Animal Man and how that happens. And are you caught up on Animal Man?
No, I'm still a little bit behind on that.
I don't want to spoil anything. I'm really that I've mentioned before on the show that's just a book that since it kicked off in the New 52, I've been really loving. And I stay always. That's not one that ever gets on the back burner or stockpiled, no matter how busy I get. There's books that not because I dislike them, just because, there's a time issue and you prioritize with your favorites. Animal Man's one of my favorites. I always jump to that book. And with the stuff that's going on with what happened to Cliff, Cliff's death, and the way that book's handling that, and I'm using that event because it's happened quite a while ago, and how that, has led to difficulties for him at home and difficulties with his wife relating to him, his wife's mother, the torn nature of what's going on with his daughter and her being this avatar of, that whole thing. I love that. The Red, I love that. I love how that's all playing out. And I think these books are very much aligned. They have a similar feel. They're a part of their own group, and it feels like they all belong together, yet they're all unique at the same time. But there's also a consistency in the sense that I've never once felt Animal Man, when I read Animal Man, that it's not part of the same world that the Phantom Stranger's in. And the same thing with Justice League Dark, and the same thing with with the Constantine book, and Swamp Thing. They all feel like they're part of the same line. And to keep a unique feel to them, but yet to keep that same tone, I think is great. And I think for fans of shows like Buffy, just for an example out there, because I'm a big fan of Dark Horse's Buffy comic. I really think if you've never checked out any of these books that we're mentioning in line with this, I think you're missing out on something that's really a cool world in the DC universe. I think there's something very much there, or the TV show Supernatural. Mm-hmm. I think if you're fans of these type of programmings, or even Grimm and some of these other programs that are on right now, I think there's a lot of Supernatural fans that should be reading these books that maybe if you're not and this would be a good book to give, I think, your friends who maybe aren't superhero fans, but are into those type of shows. If you want to give them a good comic to read, I would recommend anything from that line for fans of that type of programming, because I think that's an avenue into something like, oh, cool. I usually thought it was all, capes and tights and, big dun-dun-dun characters, kind of like you're talking about, or more Batman-ish. These are definitely very different. That's what I like about it. I love picking up Phantom Stranger because I get the same kind of fix I get from the programs that I'm throwing out there. And I like that variety in my comics. I think it's really great. And they've got the right creators on these books.
Yeah, and it's funny because you used to refer to them kind of as the palate cleanser and stuff like that. But to be honest, I look at these now differently.
I do too.
It's more of, it's not a palate cleanser. It's now, part of my appetite. It's, a full-on meal here. It's, it's a different taste. It's not the steak I have over here. Maybe this is, some other food. It's a different food. It's a different flavor. And, sometimes you're in the mood for,
Nachos Bel Grande.
What?
Nachos Bel Grande.
Yeah, nachos. All right. But, it's you get your different flavors, your different tastes. And this has some really cool spice to it, and it's got a different take to it. So I'm going to keep with that Nachos Bill Grande, by the way, for the Magic universe. It's the spice of the DC universe, It's a little bit of jalapeno, with a little bit of, some spice meat there, maybe some, I can't pull anything right now. I'm drawing a blank on anything, but
barbacoa.
You get what I'm saying.
It's barbacoa, baby. I love Chipotle.
All right.
Barbacoa from Chipotle. Oh, that's good. I honestly agree with you. You're making an excellent point. It's funny, at the beginning of the New 52, you had mentioned palate cleanser, I think, with some of these books as being because of the fact that they were a little different and they kind of did something. But we've hit a point right now where they've been around long enough that it's in its, like, you expect that now. They're their own line that is really an essential part of our reading. I've become that attached to those books. And that's really what's great about the supernatural grouping. The careful rollout of those books, that they've built on them over time. And Pandora is a part of that as well. Another book that I'm really digging. I like that they've built on that world slowly. They let Animal Man and Swamp Thing and Justice League Dark kind of really develop an identity for that sector. And when they looked successful, they said to themselves, well, what other characters and why? And it goes back to their original idea with Pandora and Phantom Stranger. And I'm glad these books have been successful. I hope they're doing well, and I hope the people are giving them a shot who maybe don't normally like all of their comics to be superhero comics, because I think these are just great books that are set in this same universe and world. I love them. So, I hope that people are giving these to friends, even if they're maybe not your cup of tea. You got to remember, it's good to recommend comics a lot of times that maybe you're like, I'm not into the whole supernatural thing. And maybe somebody listening to this is like, guys, I'm listening because I kind of want to know what's going on in these books, but they're not for me. There's a lot of comics that are out there that I've heard great things about, that when I'm looking at my budget, I'm like, I can't fit that into my budget, but I can really appreciate the recommendation because it's something that I could give somebody else. And I want to do this more. I'm not good at it. I started over the past couple years giving out trades to friends as gifts who maybe don't normally read comics, but I've tried not to give them just things that I love. I've tried to give them things that are more tailored to them. I'm not good at it, though. And I want to get better at that because I want this medium to be around. I think that there's a reason why these things are successful in the theater right now, because I think that they're interesting concepts and ideas, but you have to be judicious on what you give people because you want to give them things that they're going to like. You can't assume that, like, I love Batman the Cult. Let's throw that out there as one. There's friends of mine that I would give that to in an instant because I know they're Batman fans, but they don't normally read comics. I know they dig that book. I wouldn't give that to my wife because I just know that she wouldn't get the same impact out of it that I would. On the other hand, I'm trying to think of, and I really should. I'd love to find like that comic story that she would read to give her as a stocking stuffer or something like that. But it can't be based on my preferences. It needs to be based on her interests. So I kind of like this year I'm trying to I'd love to give her something just to let her read and just so she kind of understands what I dig about comics, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have to become a comic fan out of it. I don't think that's necessarily it. I'd love to give her something that she would read and enjoy. Maybe it's an isolated experience. That's cool. Got nothing wrong with that. I think there's, the newsstand used to be for the casual comic audience when the direct market came in. So I think there's a point to making casual readers that occasionally will pick up a trade here and there. It's good for the comic industry, to have occasional sales here and there from these extras that are out there, right?
Yeah.
If the bonus is they become comic fans, cool. If they graduate, that's neat. If not, maybe on their own they'll pick up a trade or two here and there just because they're interested. They enjoyed the experience. That's only going to happen, though, if we as fans try to really know the people that are our friends and what their real interests and tastes are and give them comic material that they might enjoy, taking our preferences out of them. Paying attention to the buzz of what's out there because there's a lot of great material. Let's take DC out of it. Across comics, there's a lot of great, diverse material that's not for every comic fan. And I think that's one of the great things right now about the market. I don't know. I think the supernatural line gets me into that thinking because I see a lot of these books as being ones that I would give friends of mine that are into supernatural material. like the shows I mentioned. I just think it's kind of a cool time, especially with the holidays coming up, to think of things like that you give people and kind of maybe help them into the industry or to appreciate what comics are. So, sorry, kind of a crazy tangent to go on, but I'm passionate about this book. It's funny how, like, there's certain books that make me think that way. That I want more readership for them. And Phantom Stranger is one of those books that I want around because it's been a pleasant surprise. I didn't see myself... You mentioned it earlier, how you're like, if it wasn't for the show... If I had, like, a different sort of budget, if I wasn't doing the podcast, I would probably be doing a lot more of a monthly hybrid of Marvel and DC and indies than I do now, because I read everything for the show. And now... I guarantee you, Phantom Stranger would be one of those books that would be with me. I would keep reading this book. Whereas before it was released, I don't know if I was into reading something else from an indie or from Marvel or something like that, and I didn't have the room in my budget. I don't know that I would drop something to try it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh,
so
definitely.
I'm glad for the podcast as well, for the same reason that you're mentioning, because this is a book that would not in a million years get a cut right now. Although I will say this, why I'd pick it up? J.M.D. Mateus. J.M.D. Mateus writing it for me is a lock. So I take it back. This book would be on my stack. Creators do draw me to a book. And J.M.D. Mateus is certainly one of those writers. So I take it back. This would be in the stack. Just for that writer alone.
Now, one of the things that I'm digging, especially about this, with the changes and the tweaks of the characters, the supernatural, mystic nature of the Question. Mm-hmm. Because he's still the big mystery. We still don't know who he is. We still don't know what's going on. What was his great big sin? What did he do to deserve his, mind wipe and his everything that he's dealing with? And I think that is something that I kind of like, because my only dealings, because I loved the previous Question. I love when Renee Montoya became the Question. I love that whole process, how, once again, it was a regular person who just, doesn't sit back, and take the regular answer. They keep pursuing. It's asking the questions. It's the pursuit of the truth. And when, he was dying, he was passing on to Renee. And I love just how that everything played out. So when we got a new Question, I was like, oh, okay, what's going to happen? But as this is going on, I'm like, okay, this is kind of neat. This is all a supernatural, immortal type of existence.
Well, one of the things I like about it is what motivates this one to strive for answers to various questions. The fact that his whole life is a mystery, does not know anything about who he is and why he's been put where he is, what caused this curse that he's going through. So that would drive him to just continually, his whole life is about questions. And I like that. I like that concept of it. It's working really well for me. I loved the previous Questions. So for me to latch on to a very new concept, but embracing elements of what I like about him, I liked, exactly everything you mentioned with the drive. I'd love to see if they tried to do a Question miniseries with this guy, what it would look like. Because I like it so far. I'm digging what's going on. It'd be interesting to see how this all would play out in a series. I also, and I don't want us to miss this part, the idea that the Phantom Stranger feels this need to kind of handle the final requests of Dr. Light, and to do something for his family, I just thought was really terrific. It was just kind of a different picture into the whole Dr. Light saga. And I like that our Phantom Stranger, even though he's forced to kind of watch things and at times turn on those closest to him to fulfill his edict, we were seeing an evolution of this guy. And the fact that having the family has changed him and evolved him. I like that our little puppy friend discovers that too. Yeah. And that has to do with his return. There's something about that I found very endearing about the series. And that whole bit I just thought played out really, really well. It's a great book from that end that you care about because of what you were saying earlier. Over time, you've gotten to know this guy. I think the family helped us to get to know and have sympathy for him that is often hard to have when you're... Because the Phantom Stranger is a lot like the Watcher in Marvel. It's a character that depending on how they're written, they're more in the background, and they don't often get involved. Or when they do, they'll often painfully get uninvolved at the wrong times. This book has given us a different perspective on the Phantom Stranger that's made me appreciate him without feeling like they've thrown that stuff out the window. And that's, I think it's really cool. And added a sense of religious lore to the DC universe that I like, that the Presence is not identified as anything other than the Presence.
Right.
And I think that should be left open to reader interpretation, whether you take it as straight fiction or you connect with it on a personal level because of your own religious beliefs. Whatever way you read this, I think there's a point to that, where you can touch on a religious style and say, this is kind of how we're viewing religion in the DC universe. It's a fictional universe, so you can play around with certain things that are a part of our own religious history, for various people, depending on what your backgrounds are, while at the same time not flying in the face of it, you know what I mean? Because the Norse gods have done that in comics, the gods have done that in Wonder Woman, the gods have done that in Thor, the new gods in their own way are their own religion kind of thing, in the DC universe. So I like how this all plays out here. I don't know, I think it's cool.
Oh yeah, and one of the things I'm always leery when it comes to religion. Because, I've got my belief, I've got my faith, and I know what I know. And I don't push it on people. I'm not that kind of person. I take things easy. If someone wants to discuss it, hey, I'll have no problem having a sit down and a chat. But I never feel like I should force, my beliefs on anybody else. But on the other hand, I'm like, I do get a little annoyed when people belittle or badmouth or, take pot shots at it. Because, let's be honest, there's holes in faith. There's holes in any religion. There's, parts where you can, always question and you can start throwing in doubt and whatnot. But, one of the things that the DC Universe has done really well with is they're not doing that type of stuff. They're not being, disrespectful. They're not being belittling. They're not saying, you because you think that you're an idiot. No, it's not. It's not a negative thing. It's not a positive thing. This is the way it is. This is what they think. This is what they believe. And by keeping the things general, by keeping it, not flat out saying this is the belief, this is the doctrine, this is what's going on, it is leaving everything open. And I think that's a great way for them to handle it. Because one, they're not insulting or offending anybody. But two, they're not really tying themselves into a corner. Because when you start getting into religion, when you start getting into religious doctrine, you can tie yourself into a corner very quickly if you don't watch how you lay things out. So they're doing a beautiful job with that, and just, okay, this is what it is, this is where it is, and this is how it's playing out. Let's keep the story moving, keep it entertaining, but not make it to the point where it's going to be our own, albatross around our neck. It's going to be something that's pulling us down. This is going to instead enhance the story. And I was really happy with seeing how all this stuff played out.
See, religion in comics never bothers me, or in any medium, because I look at it as, these are all fictional worlds, any way you look at it. Even ones that blatantly, I'll use movies like The Last Temptation of Christ, throw that kind of thing out there. Okay, that's a movie. Any way you cut it, that's a movie. That's somebody's interpretation of something. It's contained in its own little movie world. I can watch a movie like that and appreciate it as a movie, but it doesn't change my personal religious beliefs one way or the other. I think if you are that easily swayed, or if people are easily swayed by that, then their religious conviction isn't that strong to begin with. And maybe, there's a time for you to kind of internalize and say to yourself, what are my beliefs? Do I have any? Do I not? And I don't know, there's not really a right or wrong on that. It's a very personal thing, and it should remain a personal thing. But I have no problem with it being explored in fiction. I love that it's explored here. I don't take it as gospel or anything like that. I take it as this is this book's interpretation of how religion fits into this world, of the comic, which is a great thing about, I think, a universe with, I would imagine religion might look slightly different on Earth 2. Yeah. Just for an example, throwing it out there, where there could be a different sort of lore presented over there. But maybe some elements carry over from this Earth, the main Earth. So I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I think it's fun to see that played around with. And this kind of book, it's one of the things I like, because this separates, in my mind, this separates this book from Swamp Thing. It separates this book from Animal Man and Justice League Dark and Constantine, and so on. Just because it's exploring something that you don't get in those books, but it's a part of that world. I think it's cool. I really like that unique nature of this.
Oh, definitely. And one of the things that, kind of like, I liked how you mentioned how they call, the little dog the presence. I love how they kept referring to the lamb. They didn't say Jesus. They didn't say the Son of God. They said the lamb. And I thought that was, again, another cool way of dealing with, what's going on, who he is, but not, again, it's that nice balance of the religious, but not, saying, bam, throwing it in people's faces. I thought that was a cool way of handling it.
Speaking of lambs, the 3 sacrifices that occurred on the ground in order to bring and trap the Phantom Stranger, the Question, and Pandora were an interesting way to end the book, as they were pulled in. I really liked how that organically, after the fight was done, and Zoriel left, you have this sequence where now we're seeing directly how they're being pulled into the events that have happened in Justice League Dark and in, the whole Trinity War, which I think is great. I just think it's a very cool ending. I like the build. I like that there is a build to this. There's something, to me, serialized storytelling is at its best when you take time to develop and take full advantage of building it to the point where now that we see the 3 of them together again, I care about seeing the 3 of them together and what it's going to be like when you've got Swamp Thing and Constantine, and their new little friend questioning the 3 of them. I want to see that. I mean, that stuff is neat to me.
Yeah. Hey, one of the things I was thinking about...
Asa, I should say, the healer.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about with the Dr. Light and that final parting gift to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we've got a chance of seeing a female Dr. Light? That maybe the wife absorbs something beyond just a final memory of her husband?
It all depends on what happens with Dr. Light. I don't think we have a full answer yet on what's happening with Dr. Light. So, I don't know. The jury's still out on that. I like your idea. I know where you're going with that. You're saying, is this the way we're going to get a female Dr. Light in this world? Maybe. And I'd be cool with that. Completely cool with that. But
definite.
I don't know. It's a good idea. I can see that going a lot of different ways.
Yeah, because we're not 100%. I'm not 100% certain Dr. Light's gone.
Same with me.
Completely. There may be something more left from him. So again, it's they introduce the character, then they kill him off, and he's a major part of the story. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm cool with that. But part of me does want more from that character, because I was thinking, you could do a lot more with this guy. And then with the wife, I'm like, hey, this would be another way of handling it. Put her on, Justice League of America taking her husband's spot, or Justice League Dark, or something else do with her. I
don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with the character. I think there's certain things that need to play out in order to see what really happens with him, because we're already seeing elements of him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Let's see how it all plays out. Can we talk Pandora, number 4?
Sure.
Just a little bit about that one, because I think it's obviously it leads into this, and the Curse Part 1. It's Ray Fawkes, the writer. Francis Portela is on art. Hi-Fi on colors. Taylor Esposito on letters. Julian Totino Tenesco on cover art. Harvey Richards, associate editor. Will Moss, editor. Brian Cunningham, senior editor. And a massive apologies for name butchery there, because it happened. And I'm loving this book. This was an interesting one. I didn't know what avenue Pandora would take. And I'm really glad that this book's in existence, because I like her whole story. I like that she was driven by this whole thinking that because she opened toyed with the box, that she caused all of this. And now her mission's kind of like, she found out that the box isn't what she thought it was. It was an element of science. And it's now about putting the evil back in. and returning, I'm guessing, trying to return the crime syndicate to their world is where it's going to go. But what I really liked about this issue was she goes to that world. She sees their Martian Manhunter. And it's really interesting to just get an avenue of the desolation that's occurred over there. The danger of having parasites like that on our world becomes really in your face when you see stuff like that. And that adds to a story to me. I love this book.
Hit pause for a quick second, please. Oh, Guy, I got to agree with you on that. Because this is, it's funny, you talk about desolation, you talk about just, the nastiness of that is Earth 2. I can understand why they'd want to leave.
3. Earth 3.
What'd I say?
2.
Oh, sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's all the same. Come on, you know what I meant.
I did. I was just clarifying for our audience that you know what you meant.
Oh, well.
Because you do.
Well, yeah, questions. Yeah, sometimes. But no, I did like just the, not only just when we see this kind of their version of the Martian, how he's just, bits and pieces and just dying, but you see just the massive destruction. You see just what is this, that vision of your head of the apocalyptic society with, Washington in shambles, bones, scattered throughout everything, and just everything is just nasty and destructive. And I wondered, was it, is this how it normally looks? Is this a sunny afternoon to them? Or did something else beyond the normal darkness, the normal evil that happens? Because
it did. Darkseid did. Darkseid happened to their world. That was the red. Remember the red that was coming in the red skies? That was apocalypse coming to them. That was what happened to their world. That was apocalypse.
Right. Yeah. But it's... Yeah. Okay.
So their world was devastated by apocalypse because of the very nature of their inability to be the Justice League.
Yeah.
They couldn't come together the way that our world did. They couldn't have the situation that Earth 2 did. They're the third scenario. We actually saw 2 very different scenarios with what happened with Darkseid coming. We saw what happened on that basically kicked off the New 52 with that Justice League book. We saw what happened in Earth 2 with it, and actually what happened on that world was very tragic on Earth 2. But they managed to persevere. This world didn't.
No, this world died in death and destruction. But I wondered what it looked like before Darkseid. How nasty? Because we talked about that in a couple of the issues ago, where we talk about just what is the world like to Earth, to Earth 3. What is it like to the crime syndicate? What is a good day for them? What is the way the world should look? Because you figure, with the amount of destruction, with the amount of everything they're doing to our Earth, once they got there, how much of it is, good? How much of it's going to survive? How much of it is going to be something positive?
Their world?
Their world, our world, their ideal version of a world?
Well, I'm assuming it would be with them being the ruling faction and people being either lining up or being killed. Which we've seen. We actually saw that when they started to take over in this Forever Evil title. So I think you're asking a great question, but I think we're seeing elements of what their rule is like. And ultimately why, when a threat like Darkseid comes, people don't rally behind them. They run from them.
Right.
And when you've got a Darkseid coming, you can't have that. You've got to rally together. You've got to come together for the common good, or else you're going to fall apart and fizzle. Because they don't trust each other. I mean, can you imagine going into a fight with Power Ring against a threat like Darkseid?
Yeah, that wouldn't work too well.
No, not at all. He's got a thing on his arm that feeds off of his fear, true, but that thing, would that thing keep him around and say, no, we've got to fight? I don't know. Or would that thing help him fly away for survival purposes, leaving the world to fall and crumble?
Yeah, that thing would definitely tell him to run and hide. Mm-hmm. Because it wants to survive. It wants to live. Then you got Ultraman, who doesn't work well with others, and Owlman, who kind of works with Superwoman, so there would be kind of a team up there, but you would have Ultraman wanting to lead the charge, but he's not exactly a leader. They wouldn't follow him. So yeah, there's a lot of mix-ups and mess-ups that would happen. Yeah,
it's crazy stuff. I don't know. I love that about this story. To me, that's part of the richness of it. is exactly what you're mentioning. Let's think through what did that look like. I want to see. I'd actually love to see the full A to B of what that looked like. I hope at some point we get to see it, because that stuff to me intrigues me. And even if we don't, I think the characters are so well crafted that we're already playing that scenario out in our heads. Like, we could sit around a table and have major debates over how each person reacted to all this, and probably question our own viewpoint. I've been saying, are you sure that this person would react this way? Don't you think they might do this? I like that kind of stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's no set in stone with anything. And even if they were to flesh out more of the story, there's still going to be room for interpretation. There's still going to be room for where this goes. And I think that's, again, the strength of, the story, the strength of the groundwork that's been laid out. We introduced to Pandora, and we immediately were like, hey, this is somebody who was wrongly, who was wrongly cursed. She was just some kid who came across something. She wasn't this great evil who unleashed it. All she did, especially when we finally saw her backstory, all she did was pick up the thing, and that was it. She didn't unleash it. She didn't consciously open it and release the evils of the world. I thought that was a great way of getting us into her, getting us to understand and accept her. And so as she goes to the other world, she sees where this came from. She sees the source of the evil. She's got that connection to this to the Pandora's box, to the skull, to this piece of Earth 3. So it's natural for her to be able to transport there and back. And I thought that was, again, she's the right character to do that. And I was really happy with saying, okay, yeah, she, and it got me wondering, she's going to be the key to sending them back, but is she going to have to make a sacrifice? And that's something I hope we don't lose her. I'm hoping that she doesn't have to. Maybe, I'm hoping she's not the key, not the one who is needed to send them over. That is something that kind of popped in my head, and I'm a little worried about her.
Yeah, I am too. Well, I am and I'm not. Because I think, I don't know. I'm more curious to see how the Trinity, after all this is said and done, what they do. Because in her case, she's gotten a certain level of validation and vindication for, that she didn't know that she deserved. And I think that's really cool. What happened when, basically she was confronted by one of her accusers, and realized that, oh, wait a minute, I'm not what they've been saying. And I like that. I like that about the story, that hers has become kind of a redemption story. Because I always liked it. And I liked that from the first issue you questioned, wait a minute, is this even really right?
Yeah.
Really, she's been punished for this? I get the Phantom Stranger. I really do. We don't know with the question. We've got questions about the question. But her? Really? She didn't, I would scold. She deserves a major scolding. But, that's
eternity, yeah.
I would argue with a slap on the wrist over that.
Yeah, she messed up, maybe, but to be honest, she didn't really. She's an honest to God innocent on this whole matter.
Yeah.
She is. She did nothing wrong, and we've even verified even more that she did nothing wrong because one, we still don't know completely who put it in her path. Who put the skull there. We still don't know that outside force. I'm kind of leaning towards the question somehow. Maybe that's his crime, but to be honest, we're still not certain. There's a lot of temporal anomalies and whatnot that has to get laid out and played out here. Now, one of the things that I think is really cool with her is she's this immortal. We've seen her have some kind of interaction with Vandal Savage, which was neat. But I love the fact that she does have just this normal mortal man as her weapons person, as her confidant, as her friend. Yeah, I'm really digging Marcus. When they first introduced the character, I was like, okay, where are they going to go with this? But they're pulling him in. He's becoming more of a regular on the show, and I want to see him stick around. He's another character that I'm like, as this plays out, as this story goes, I'm like, this is another one that has real definite possibility and potential to be a really cool person and a cool character. Yeah,
I actually liked the way he was questioning her because of what happened with Superman. Sitting there saying, wait a minute, you were involved in what happened to Superman. All I know is, things were going pretty well till you got involved in Superman. Now Superman could be dead, and that's on you, right? Because all I know is he was fine before you got involved with him, and now dude's in trouble. I really liked that. Why wouldn't you? Am I involved with the wrong person? Am I on the wrong side of this whole scenario? But her laying that out and just saying to him, look, the threat that's here is something you can help resolve. I let you know that you're the weapon master. I brought you back to that. And this is technology. It's not what I assumed it was. I need you to help me rebuild this thing. Basically building a prison to send them back to. Send them back to... It's in many ways, it's kind of indicative of the Phantom Zone, in the sense that they came to our world, now we're going to zap them back to their world, so to speak. Because I'm guessing that's the game plan here, is to... You're not actually putting them in the box, you're putting them back in their world, using that as a transport gateway, I'm guessing. But I want to see how this all plays out, or what happens to the crime syndicate, or are they actually put inside something? I don't know.
Well, I'm assuming this is, I'm assuming this is going to end with them going back, with them figuring out somehow to put the box back together and use it to open and pull them through to the other side. But it can't end that cleanly, and that's why I'm worried about her. Because I think, of everybody, she's got probably the biggest bullseye on her chest, just because she is the innocent, but also because she is connected to it. She's got that already, link to the device and just, part of her path. So I don't know, it's kind of neat. But the one thing I really enjoyed seeing is in his lab, you have a lot of non-tech stuff that's playing out. Tech's gone. Tech's offline. So a guy like this isn't going to just rely on some fancy lasers. He's got a 12 gauge right there. He's got a shotgun. Pure mechanical, no tech stuff. In the background, you kind of saw that little hot pad where he had a can of beans on there. So he's got his rations. He's probably got a nice set of water and fuel and various stuff that's going to keep him going and keep things moving. Again, it's little details like that I started noticing through on my art read-throughs that, again, I really enjoy this person. I really enjoy this character, and I was glad to see they completely stuck to how he would react and how he would handle this situation where tech's offline, where everything's gone, there's no utilities. He's got to survive. Well, he's going to be an okay survivor. He'll be fine. He'll be able to pull through this.
I like the whole bit with Vandal Savage. To me, we saw them have a meeting in history where she did not befriend him. She did not try to take the fact, hey, we're immortals, did not take him up on that offer. And his basically justification, there is no good in me, I'm not this. Very angry, I think, at the fact that this is somebody who could have been at one point in time a friend of his. I wonder if they had had that friendship, what path his life would have gone. You know what I mean? How would that have changed Vandal Savage? But his thing is not that he wouldn't have joined up with the crime syndicate. He would have befriended them, would have worked with them. But because they see it as he would be working for them, he's content to let her disrupt them any way that she wants to, because that doesn't work in his mind. Mm-hmm. He's Vandal Savage. The audacity of them to even suggest that he is an underling spits in his face. But he might be one of their strongest allies had they just embraced and stroked his ego. Very interesting to see that play out, because I think he would have joined them under the right circumstance, joined with them under the right circumstance. It's an interesting play out with Vandal Savage to see how easily he could switch to that side.
Yeah, he's one of the wild cards. But again, it shows with the crime syndicate that they're not going to have that finesse because they don't need it. They're conquerors. They're dictators. They're not a politician. They're not, going to, give up, a piece of, hey, you can have Australia. There you go. There. Keep, placate them. You're now the king of Australia. You can have that little corner of the world.
No, that's Lex Luthor's anyway.
Right, but a little beachfront property for him.
Lex Luthor, ruler of Australia.
But they're not going to have that finesse to them because that's not how they roll. Where if this was Lex conquering the world, I could see Lex doing something like that, where Lex would placate him, and we've seen the Rogues would interact
temporarily.
with each other.
Temporarily, Lex would never. He would placate Vandal Savage to a point. The reason why I say that is I've always enjoyed the relationship between Brainiac and Lex, where there's a relationship of convenience there, but you know that Lex would turn on him at the first chance he'd get and take any power away from him that he could. I think this would be the same kind of relationship with Vandal Savage and Lex Luthor, where Lex would turn on him if he could.
Yeah, but if there was never a reason for him to turn, he wouldn't. Lex would honor the agreement if it served his purposes.
I don't know that he would honor it. I don't know that I agree with that. I think he would honor the agreement as long as it served his purposes.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But when it doesn't serve his purposes anymore, I don't think he would be content to leave Vandal Savage in power.
Right. Oh, we're agree on that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be. It would if everything is going good, if everything's flowing smoothly, and it's all part of Lex's plan, he'll let him stay in charge of that one piece of the world. Where Vandal wouldn't. Vandal Savage, I think, would be the one who would make the play first, because Vandal Savage has that conqueror mindset.
And
He's got that conqueror mentality.
But you're discounting the fact that Lex would see that, and Lex would get him first because of that.
Right.
That's where there would be an interesting. I don't know. There's always been a danger with the two of them working together because they both would see everything you're saying. I think everything you're saying is true, but I think Lex would see that.
Yeah, well, Lex would give him enough rope to hang himself with. And that way, in Lex's mind, he's not betraying the code. He's not betraying their agreement. It was Vandal Savage who tried to double-cross him, but I'm Lex Luthor, so I saw it coming.
What is Lex's code? I guess the part... I don't know that I agree with you that Lex has this code that you're talking about. I don't see Lex going, I made a bargain with this guy, so I'm going to stick to it. I don't see Lex being that kind of guy. I see Lex twisting the bargain at any point in time because it serves Lex's purpose. I think what you said earlier about serving Lex's purposes is spot on. I agree with you 110%. And I think by the nature of the fact that that is very much a part of Lex, the code for Lex is what's good for Lex.
Right. That's the code.
Yeah, so, okay. So we are seeing it the same way.
Yeah, we're seeing it the exact same way. It's the code when, everybody has their own code. Everybody has their own way of looking and dealing with life. It's their code. Throughout the term code, it kind of implies an honorable dealings.
Yes.
Not necessarily. It depends on the person. Each person has their own code.
Got it.
Lex has his code. Lex has his own belief, his own, philosophies. Now, Lex isn't the, like the Joker code where he would do something, stupid just to do it, not for any, reasons because Joker's got a little bit crazy in him. Lex has his code where he will do stuff, that's good for Lex. That's part of his plan. That's part of his direction that he sees going. Now,
my feeling is that Lex's solution would be, I'm taking Vandal Savage down the first chance I get when things are in place the way that I want them because I know Vandal Savage can't be trusted. The problem is Vandal Savage is also very intelligent, and Vandal Savage would see that coming as well, which is why they're interesting foils for each other.
Right.
Because of that.
I think Lex would do a strong offensive defensive maneuver. Mm-hmm. Now, what I mean by that, it's not...
It's strategery at its best.
Right, it's strategery. Yeah. It's Lex's strategery, where Vandal Savage would have more of a direct offensive attack.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the difference between them.
I think they're interesting when they work together.
Yeah.
Because I think the issues that they have are genuine. You're dealing with two... Because I consider Vandal Savage very intelligent. Just by longevity purposes. And I think that's something that's... If you play off Vandal, like in this scenario with the debate he's having with Pandora, he's coming at it from an intelligent standpoint of saying, what, to go there is really a slap to my face, a slap to my sense of honor and dignity. If they had, really treated me with the respect that I deserved, this would be a different sort of scenario. but they don't. Instead that they look at me as being nothing more than a minion, and I am Vandal Savage. I'm no his ego trips. Lex has an ego as well. That's where the two of them relate. Also, ultimately, where the two of them cannot be friends for more than a very short period of time. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Now, Pandora and Savage, that's another team-up of who's going to betray who's going to double-cross, and when's it going to happen, how's it going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's another neat concept when dealing with two immortals, because I love these scenes with the fight sequence where we get Pandora, her jaw gets a little bit crushed, she gets a couple teeth knocked out, and Vandal gets his hand blown off. But again, one panel they're just deformed, next panel they're healed up and fixed because of that immortality. It reminded me of like the Highlander stuff with some cool vampire stories you'll get where they regrow or reattach severed limbs, and just there's a neat side of immortality. But again, there is also the curse side of it. So I loved seeing these two together. I liked seeing just this pairing and this partnership kind of growing, developing, and again, it's another where's it going to go wrong moment. Not is it going to go wrong, where and when will it go wrong?
Fans of the Highlander series is another group of people that I would bring into some of these supernatural books, because I think that very much there's a connection there. I'm glad you brought up that particular series, because I agree with you. There's a connection here, and it works. And I think if you see that in comics, you're going to go, oh, wait, I didn't know comics had this kind of material as a part of it as well. And that's where I think there is a rich lore to the DC Universe. And I applaud them for when they were thinking out the New 52, to saying to themselves, there's certain avenues of the DC Universe that are great properties and great concepts, but they haven't stuck, or maybe haven't stuck for a long time. Let's experiment with some of these and see what fans get attached to in this day and age, recognizing that there's a different audience base than maybe in the past when we tried to roll out these series. And they're cool concepts, and maybe they'll hit that audience base. They'll hit this generation in a way that they wouldn't maybe hit other ones. So I give them credit for trying some of these things, and at the same time introducing new characters. Like Pandora's a new character, and I think she's a great character. So I'm glad that they've done a nice mix of taking their, some of their cool franchises that have been on the shelf, dusting them off and giving them a shot here. Not all of them have worked. Some of those series have, fallen off the radar, and that's fine. I'm glad they gave them an experimental shot. I dig that kind of stuff. I'm surprised pleasantly to see some of the ones that have developed an audience base, and I hope the audience base continues to grow. And I think it's that Supernatural line that is chock full of characters. You got Pandora, Animal Man, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, Justice League Dark. I mean, these, Constantine. These are Constantine. You could argue, look at the longevity of Hellblazer, so that there's a validity there. But, for the rest of those series, they've had success. Swamp Thing's had major success from time to time, both as a DC book, regular DC book, and as a Vertigo title. And Animal Man had some success as well. But, there's still things that, like, your traditional comic fan, your traditional superhero fan, I should say, isn't normally drawn to. Unless they've given it a shot, like you're mentioning here. And I think you're right, the Highlander fan would definitely be into this.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I loved the bit where she snuck up on the Outsider.
Oh,
God. I
yeah.
so want to see where that goes.
Something that I kind of realized, and I don't know why it never really dawned in my head, but I realized it, second, third read through, I don't remember which one, when she's approaching him, when she's coming up and has that kind of rant and that gloating, he's like, only getting started, aren't we? Won't the people be surprised? And not a single one of them can touch us now. Can they? Not a single one. I'm waiting for the society to double cross all the villains. How are they planning that out? Because it's coming. But how much of a servant, how much of subservient, is he actually to the crime syndicate? Or is this, a villainous rant? Or is the outsider, playing a power play against the crime syndicate? Is he actually, maybe manipulating things from behind, or is this maybe a Owlman double cross that he's planning or something?
I do think there's a genuine affinity for him and Owlman. I think they've both got the same kind of creepy. They appreciate each other. I think there's a genuine friendship there between the two of them. Like, I think that's genuine. I really do.
Okay. There's still that Alfred loyalty to the Wayne family.
To Owlman.
Right.
I don't know what it was like to the whole family, but I felt like everything we've seen with him with Owlman has been genuine. And I think it feeds off of what you're saying, though. He sees that relationship with Owlman as being to his benefit. It's been a partnership that, in its creepy way, has been mutually beneficial. So there is a trust and a friendship there. It's a very dark friendship. It's not, the way that our Bruce Wayne and Alfred are here, where there's an endearing nature to it, to this victimized child. We saw it. It's a whole bunch of creepy. I think that 0 month issue said a lot in how that works, and I take that to be pretty much so genuine as to what their relationship's like. But it's a different sort of creepy.
Yeah. You want to know something kind of silly?
What?
That I literally just realized at this moment, and I've read this issue, a couple times now. When Pandora's sneaking in, they show her, dropping in and doing the sneaking creep and all that, but they show her in the doorway, and then they have the camera, and then they show what the camera sees, and you don't see her in the image. It just never really dawned on me that she's not coming up on camera, that she's not being recorded, and she's not, they can't see her.
You know what? I'm gonna tip a hat to you on this one, and be fair. I didn't really notice that until you mentioned it now. I think that's really cool. I think I was so focused on, you're in your mind, you start fast forwarding ahead where this is going, to her sneaking up on him, that you kind of have blinders on to certain events that are happening. I didn't see that either until you're mentioning it now. And I got to be fair. I mean, you're pointing out something that I didn't notice. Good catch, because I think that's cool.
It's
cool.
wonder if it's her nature of who she is, or if it's a spell she cast, or is there something beyond that?
I love that.
Yeah, that's a cool. I was like, oh, dang, that's neat.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Pandora is just a really neat book. It's a title that I'm glad that DC's rolled out. I'm very curious to see when this is all said and done. What does that mean for Pandora? Like you said, does she have a target on her? Being that she's going to sacrifice herself to end this. But to me, more interesting would be if she doesn't. Because where do you go when you've discovered your entire concept of self has been a lie? You shouldn't have felt like you were the one that caused all of this.
Right.
Yet she still feels like she wants to set things right. And I like that. I like that about her. I feel she's very heroic. And there's something about her that I immediately enjoy. And I'm anxious to see where she goes from here with this series. Because I think she's a character that I want to follow. And that's neat.
Oh, definitely. I do not want her to go anywhere. But as I said, I am worried she's the one of the Trinity. She's got a bullseye on her. Now, because she's got her own monthly, maybe not. Maybe it'll be a question, or maybe they won't need to sacrifice anybody. But I just got this bad feeling. I got a bad feeling we're going to lose Pandora.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Good book.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Hi, this is Jack Nauer, and I got to say that I definitely want to geek out about the Necessary Evil DVD. I just finished watching it, and it was really informative and really fun and well put together. I think it's just as good as the documentary they did, the DC Secret Origins of the Superheroes, the one they did a couple of years ago that deals with the origin of DC Comics and how it went through. If you guys have seen that one, what do you think? Do you think that it's comparable to that? Or anyway, but the main question I had was concerning Vertigo. Now, on your advice, I went ahead and got the Vertigo bundle from DCBS. I am exceedingly new to Vertigo and have pretty much never read Vertigo at all. I know you guys like Fables. I know you like 100 Bullets, and I know you like American Vampire. And I intend to get a couple trades of those from In Stock Trade and check them out. So I was kind of hoping that you and the Sensei could give me maybe some of the better storylines to get me started, and maybe even some off-brand Vertigo stuff like Jim brought up the one about the animals, and I am forgetting the name. But if you guys could come up with something, maybe one of your famous top 5 lists that I could get the trades for, and see if Vertigo's the thing for me. All right, thanks a lot, and thanks for a great show. Talk to you later.
That's kind of a tough list.
Big time.
Yeah, see, for me, it's kind of like there's two different avenues. You're talking about classic Vertigo, and there's so much good classic Vertigo. My recommendation with that Sandman series being out right now, like if you liked the first issue of the new Sandman series, I would highly recommend going back and reading Sandman. It was a 75-issue series. It's all traded, so it's great for someone like you who's like, I want to jump on that. I'll give you my top 5. These are top 5 that I would recommend. They're not in particular order. I'm just doing them off the top of my head. Sandman, Preacher, Why the Last Man. Ooh, I'm trying to think of where I go from there. Hellblazer's terrific. I really grew to know and love and enjoy Hellblazer. I'm trying not to leave out ones that were some of my favorites that I was digging along the way. What would I say? Fables would be my 5th one right now, and you're already on the radar for that. Those would be like my top 5 of like you must try. There's so many more that I'm leaving out of that though from it, but I would say those are good ones to get your feet wet, and they're different enough that like if you don't like those, they're really good, strong starting points. But I'm a big fan of the new ones that are coming out because I think they're very unique and different, and I think they're a great way to jump on a budget. Just say, hey, I'm going to get on the ground floor of these series, see if any of them are for me. I'm out the price of a single issue if they're not, or a couple issues. If you kind of buy them in advance, what you do from DCB Service, you kind of do the pre-order thing. You can give yourself a couple of months, and at that 50% off, you're not like killing your budget doing that, and you get a flavor and a sampling, and you can kind of pare down based on preference. If you like all of them, you keep getting all of them. If you're like, these two really I dug, the other one's not so much for me. It's kind of a good way to do that, so it's nice to get in the ground floor. So that would be my recommendation as far as, like, with the new series. Just try them out, because I'm digging them. I think they're really, really cool. What about you, Jim, though? Where are you at? I don't know what you're reading right now. Like, the new books I'm really digging so far, so I would recommend those to anybody. But where are you at?
Well, budget-wise, I can't afford to have any Vertigo, so I'm just picking up stuff in trades, and as I get an opening in the budget, so that's where I'm going with that. So I can't really comment on the new stuff. I picked up the bundle, because it was a good deal, and I read some stuff, and it was kind of neat, but I've got to just keep the discipline up and not continue ordering, because if I pull in any more of the Vertigo stuff, I'm going to have to lose something from the DC universe. And I'm right now, there's no title that I say, let me get rid of this. I'm not as happy with this. I don't have anything that I'm reading that I'm like, I can get rid of to pull in something new. But with some trade stuff, the animal one I talked about last time was called We 3. It's W-E, then the letter 3 after. It's written by Grant Morrison. It was a 3-issue miniseries, and it's traded. There was a deluxe hardcover that came out in 2011 that has additional stuff that's absolutely wonderful and beautiful. I always will 100% recommend that to anybody else. The titles you mentioned were some great Vertigo stuff. The only thing I would maybe throw in for consideration is DMZ. By Brian Wood.
Sure.
The basic plot is New York City becomes a demilitarized zone. It's kind of seceded from the Union, and it's kind of lawlessness and just what you would expect in a military zone. So there's a reporter who's he's kind of a reporter, and he becomes more of a reporter as the series goes on, who's inside it, reporting back to the world, telling them what's really going on inside there. And it's a really cool series that, has a really neat, gritty art style that fits the grit that's going on in the DMZ. And then just there's some really cool concepts in just as the story goes on. There was a lot of twists and turns. I was like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. So that's another story I would highly recommend throughout there is a solid read through. And it's that one's all completely traded, so you can pick that up and pick up a trade, see if you like it, and you continue on. If not, you fall back.
I would say anything by Alan Moore.
Yeah.
To me, if his name's on it and it's Vertigo, you should read it. There's so much stuff, but those are some great materials. JMD Mateus's work with Vertigo was fantastic. Seekers into the Mystery is not traded, but that's one that's well worth seeking out in single issues. It's a personal favorite of mine that it wasn't as popular, but it was a great book. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. M, which didn't start out, I don't think, it didn't start out as a Vertigo title. It started out, I believe it was in Marvel's Epic line. And forgive me if I'm wrong on that. I'm throwing this off the top of my head. But I know Vertigo got it, and they... Moonshadow, I'm sorry. Did I say Moonshadow?
You said M.
I'm sorry. M was... the artist, John J. Muth, did M, which was... That was Eclipse, actually, I believe. Moonshadow. I'm sorry, take that back. Moonshadow is fantastic, and they actually DC did Forever Moonshadow, which was kind of a follow-up of sorts that I think the trade collection has both of that now. Moonshadow's fantastic. That's one of my all-time favorite stories. So I'm surprised I didn't mention that one. I could go on for hours on Vertigo. Moonshadow's great. Moonshadow's very much like a it's really cool like fantasy story. It's hard to describe what Moonshadow actually is, but that's one I'd recommend as well. So good stuff. Hope that helped. You know, it's funny, when he was talking about that DVD, did you got that Secret Origin, didn't you, back when that came out? The story of DC Comics?
Yes.
Okay. That's the one that he was referring to, and that was a great documentary, and I agree with him. It delved into and gave a lot of insight, and I felt that this was an interesting follow-up to it, and I really enjoyed this one as well. I would like to see more. I would love to see them maybe do a yearly documentary just about different aspects of the DC universe, or, you know, maybe bi-yearly, whatever, something of this quality. Because I feel like there's so much more they could talk about, and I feel these documentaries are really meant for us, the fans who are currently reading. So I really quite enjoyed it. I don't know, did you get the chance to watch that?
I actually, I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it. I'm behind on a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, that's one of them because I'm like, I got to get to that.
Are you behind on Arrow?
Yes, actually, I'm behind on a couple episodes of Arrow.
So you don't know anything about Black Canary?
Not yet. I've actually only seen her introduction. I haven't seen the episodes beyond that because I've kind of gotten I have free time on the weekends, and so far every weekend's been full, and so I'm hoping I can find some free time to actually maybe this weekend. I want to get caught up on Arrow. I've got a lot of reading I have to do. I'm hoping this is going to be a geek weekend where I can just stay in.
You're at least 2 episodes behind on Arrow.
Yes,
and you've got 2 very, very powerful episodes of Arrow in there that, like, I know something you don't know kind of episodes. They're really, really good.
Well.
They're really... No, I'm saying that in the sense that I'm deliberately saying that if you enjoyed the introduction of Black Canary, you'll be very satisfied.
Cool.
So it's a very good, and that doesn't reveal anything. It's very good episodes. I've really enjoyed. Arrow's one of those shows that I can't miss, and I understand what you're saying. You know, it's life kind of doesn't give you choices all the time, but it's a great series. I'm really, really digging it, and actually I've seen that the viewership has gone up. The ratings are good, so I'm glad to see that with that series. But that's it. And actually, if you want to call into our show voicemail line, it's 1-440-388. 4434 or drnorge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, and please, any thoughts that you have about comics or pop culture or anything that relates, to our podcast, please feel free to call in and shout it out, because that part is always fun for me. It's great to hear what you guys are thinking as well.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
I want to remind everyone to check out our show website, ragingbullets.com. That's where you'll find updates on the next podcast episodes. We love keeping you up to date on what's going on with the show and when episodes are going to be released, so that's your spot to do that. I also have that link to our Twitter account, so if you prefer to get information via Twitter, it's a great way to do it. And also our show Facebook page, which is Raging Bullets on the Facebook site, so if you have a chance to do it that way. Besides our Raging Bullets Facebook page, I've mentioned many times on the show the amazing Raging Bullets Facebook group. It's a wonderful community of people who are fans of the show, who are just fans of comics in general and pop culture. Also friends of ours who run podcasts, blogs, who are creators, different things like that. It's just a great community of people who, the show, it's gone so far beyond the show, and it's just a great spot that I love to see what everybody's up to. So please, if you have a blog or a podcast or anything, books or anything that you're doing or promoting, please make sure to throw them up on our Facebook group community, because I just think it's a great opportunity to really share and collaborate. I love that kind of thing about comics nowadays, that we're able to do that. So please feel free to do that. And I also want to remind everyone, we're also on Google+. We have I have my own personal page. There's a show Google+ page. So whatever social media you like to interact with, we are available on some level on all of them. And I want to thank everyone who shouts out our show. There's so many times that people will shout us out on Twitter or on Facebook or somewhere. We rely on that heavily. The fact that you guys get the word out about us. We don't have an advertising budget, so we rely a lot on word of mouth from just the great fan community, and you guys have been very good to us over the years. So I just want to take a couple seconds to just thank you, for letting one friend know about us. Whatever you've done to just kind of just get the word out, that's really greatly appreciated. That means a lot to our podcast, and I really do feel we owe a lot to the community. Want to remind everybody about our show sponsors, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, remember, this month you can get all DC pre-order trades and hardcovers at 50% off, including that Trinity War hardcover. I love these volumes. They just feel like they're on a better paper. It's more of a deluxe edition. There's something that's special about them, and for collectors of its favorite stories like this Trinity War, which really impacts the universe, you may want to get it in this volume. It's a 50% off trade, that's 50% off hardcover, I should say, that's $14.99. It's a great opportunity to grab that. Also remember that they are a digital partner for Comixology, iVerse Media, Diamond Digital, and My Digital Comics. I have my account linked, and it's really great at the end of the month when I'm going to place an order to just see that I've got a credit that I've built up by linking those accounts. So it's just a great opportunity to just save a few more bucks off of the amazing deals they already have there. InStockTrades.com, remember that they have the Batman hardcover Volume 3, the third volume of The Death of the Family. That's $13.74, 45% off. Also, they have Injustice, Gods Among Us, which is Volume 1, the hardcover. I'm loving that series. I'm reading it digitally, and if you haven't been picking it up, it's a great Elseworld story. I was reading it long before I got the game. I just got the game recently because it just came out this past week on the PC version, so it's a great book, and I want to shout it out because you might be missing it and dismissing it as a video game tie-in that maybe doesn't apply to you. It's a wonderfully cool Elseworld story, so I just want to give it a really high recommendation. The work of writer Tom Taylor is just a home run on this series. Over at Aquaman, they've got the Volume 3 hardcover of Throne of Atlantis, which is 50% off, only $12.49. So just some great deals. And remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. And it's just a wonderful site to browse for your comic book needs. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. They're wonderful, not just to us, but to just a variety of podcasts. Their support of the podcasting community should be commended. And I just want to thank them for doing that. Remember, if you go to our website, there's handy-dandy links right to both of those sites. And it's great to let them know that you're jumping over there from the podcast. We really appreciate that. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to discuss the whole Hell-El storyline that's going on in Superman's books. I'm really digging that right now, and I thought it'd be great to talk about that. Also, Action Comics, the issue that came out recently that ties right into the Batman Year Zero. Let's talk about that, or Zero Year, I should say. We should talk about that one as well. And Jim, what I'd like to start doing is let's periodically make sure on our show, like maybe every week or every couple of weeks, let's take a book and spotlight a book that we haven't talked about in a while. And if we're okay, if we can kind of indulge me on this one, if we could talk about Animal Man.
Oh, definitely. That should be a good one.
Yeah, and just kind of periodically grab books and do it that way. And you had something you wanted to discuss as well.
Oh, Damian, Son of Batman, Issue 1.
Yeah, so I think we'll make a nice packed episode next week and talk about a lot of those books because I'm really excited. So we will see everyone next week.
Bye!
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. What you do to me, Hawkman. Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see.